Next on the agenda, it's my pleasure to introduce to you our CEO, Les Moreland. Les has been with us since 2005 and our CEO since 2014. He's got a vast background in a lot of different areas before coming here, but he's going to tell us and bring us up to speed today on the state of Wiregrass Electric Cooperative. So, Les Moreland.
Check. Hey, everybody. Welcome to your 80th anniversary annual meeting. It's our pleasure to host you. We're so glad you're here. We have a great story to tell, and there's so much to tell. I had to leave about 2/3 of what I want to say off because I don't want to take too much time, but give me a next slide. We're going to talk today a little bit about the Wiregrass Way. Brad Kimbrough, who is our moderator, coined this as our campaign for the year, and you'll see it in the annual meeting, and you'll in the annual report, and you'll see it in the magazine. So the Wiregrass Way is just enough, isn't enough. Give me the next slide. I want to start us out by showing you something that the employees came together just after I became CEO. We had meetings for about a year with an outside coach, and we tried to talk about who we are and what we want to present to you, our members. And they came up with these never and always statements, and I'm not going to read them all to you. You can scan through this and you can see some things like never be rude or disrespectful, never say it's not my job, never allow your ego or blind spot to make you part of the problem. So these are some of our creeds that our employees said this is who we want to be. And then the always statements, try to always present the best version of yourself, treat others as they want to be treated, be truthful, operate with integrity, go the extra mile. What I want to convey to you is in the customer service vision statement, which is the last column, we decided that our culture, we want to think every day about lighting up our members' lives and then powering through storms together. And we try to hold these phrases in our minds in everything we do. So what I'm going to do is unpack those two statements for a few minutes today. Lighting up your life and powering through storms together. Next slide. The last week was tough emotionally for me. The anniversary of Hurricane Michael was October 10th. It was the worst event in the 80-year history of Wiregrass Electric, partly because our size, we're now up to 25,000 meters, and I'll give you some of the details of how devastated things were. But I want to talk about that for a minute. And as I was thinking about the challenges, when we do strategic planning, we talk about strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. And the threats that we face, that we have to plan for, things like hurricanes and storms, the threats and weaknesses, there's a weakness in our territory with infrastructure, which we think about lack of 4-lane roads. There's a looming threat that grows bigger every day with cybersecurity. I want to speak to you a little bit about what we're doing to address that. It seems like the elephant in the room these days is the digital divide that our members have compared to people that live in cities and urban areas. It's the lack of broadband internet. I want to talk about that. And finally, it's the energy landscape. And what we find is the ground beneath our feet is moving. And I want to unpack that thought for a few minutes. Starting with the hurricane, there's a scripture that I have quoted here. The rain came down, the streams rose, the winds blew and beat against that house, and yet it did not fall because it had its foundation on the rock. It's only when the unthinkable happens, when that which is unexpected comes falling down on you, that you learn whether you have a firm foundation. The first day or two of the storm, the devastation was overwhelming for us. That Wednesday afternoon we were in the office as the storm hit. And of course, many of us spent the entire night Wednesday night. And we learned there were 18,000 of you out of power. We didn't know at the time, but it turned out there were 500 poles down, and that over 60 miles of our power lines were on the ground. It turned out to be 213 transformers that were damaged. At that time, we didn't know that within 9 days we would have it fully restored. In the first day or two, I just can't tell you, and as I thought about it, the trauma of what I felt came back to me in the last few days. Jason Thrash, where are you, buddy? You know, Jason sent the SOS out to Montgomery, to our friends, the other co-ops, and I think he asked for 100 linemen. We ended up with 225. The 100 scared me, you know, in terms of, you know, my background's finance and accounting. And by the time we assessed the damage, we said, send everybody you got. And almost every co-op in the state sent everybody they could spare. And as I watched the trucks roll in and contemplated whether in a week or two or how long it was going to take, what started going off in my head is this is going to cost millions of dollars. And not having been through it before, the first thing I thought about was facing the board and you and how we're going to pay for it, what's it going to do to your rates. And of course the board said, don't worry about that, Les, just get the power on. You know, first things first, you know. I couldn't help myself because, like I said, you know, I like to see the numbers work out. But anyway, we got into it a few days and we kind of figured things out and figured a plan within a few days that we would hopefully get some of the money back from FEMA, which would offset the cost, and talked to our auditors, Erica. I did a late night call with Terry Mitchell after Jason and I had ridden around that day and had a long day just taking in the devastation. And I think Jason was worried about me because he said, man, what's wrong? I said, I don't know how we're going to account for all this. And so I said, I'm going to call Terry Mitchell, and we did. And we talked through how we could account for it in a way that wouldn't affect the members negatively. I want to promise you that we were thinking about you. We were thinking about getting your power on, but we're also thinking about not having anything happen that would cost you in your electric bill. Well, fast forward to the end. 9 days later, the power was back on. And then Lisa, wave your hand, Lisa, stand up. Lisa's our CFO. Lisa and her right hand, Misty, had to document all this because the only way the federal government's going to help us is if we write down everything we did, every pole, every foot of wire, every transformer, every spot. It has to be documented and sent to the federal government to a website. So for the next few months, Lisa spent weekends and nights in addition to her day job trying to get all that together. And just a few weeks ago, we got the last couple of $1 million. We got $5.8 million back from the federal government out of a total cost of $7.5 million. I'm going to tell you, that was a load off, y'all. And what that means is this storm had no effect on your cost, your power bill. And y'all, thank God, that's a miracle. Think of what we've been through. So part of my theme today, yeah. My theme today is to thank God and honor God for our blessings, because, you know, when you go through the valley of the shadow of death and you come out the other side and everything's good, all you can do is say, praise God. Next slide. So, carrying on with the theme, this co-op's foundation's on the rock. You know, what happens when the house is built on sand and the storm comes? But our foundation is strong. We're strong financially. We got a team of 66 people, and you know, Johnny was running for the board this time. He came to our board meeting, and he was just telling me, you know what I'm impressed with about the co-op, Les, is y'all have great people. You know, everybody I meet is a quality person. They're great at what they do, and that's the truth. The rock here is the 66 dedicated employees who are great at what they do. And the linemen, they're willing to go day and night to help you. So we had that foundation. And then we have our cooperative network, our other co-ops, and you know, we have our strategic partners like Jackson Thornton, and the vendors that bring us materials. And you know, that's the rock. We've got a great foundation, and I'm more confident than ever, whatever challenges we face, we're going to be okay. And I'm going to tell you about some of the challenges now. Next. Cybersecurity. Anybody here had anybody try to get your identity, your credit card, your debit card, you name it? You know, I hope I'm not the only one. Somebody tried to get my tax refund a few years ago. So now I have to have a special ID when I file a tax return. Lord have mercy. Yesterday afternoon when I was getting ready to talk to y'all, I learned a new word. It's called an email cluster bomb. I got an email cluster bomb at 1:15 yesterday, and I had 300 emails. And Google says what they were trying to do was distract me because they had my credit card, and they went online and charged $1,035 at the North Face to buy 3 jackets. So I spent all afternoon yesterday closing my credit card off and notifying the bank and all kind of things. And that was just my personal account. Now, we have threats every day. I read an article this week that 56% of utilities report that they had loss of data, loss of their systems in the last year due to cyber attacks. Chattanooga News reported this week the Tennessee Valley Authority, which is a big generation and transmission provider in Tennessee, North Alabama, and several other states. They have 60 people that spend all day long in a security center to protect their systems from cyber attacks. They are able to detect 1 billion intrusions every day. Now that's just hard to believe, isn't it? They got nuclear plants, they got hydro plants. So, I mean, it's a crazy world we live in. Well, I'm here to tell you that your board and Danny Exum is right here in the middle. Danny's our Chief Security Officer and our Chief Information Technology Officer. And, you know, we've got about 8 or 9 levels of security that we build to protect the privacy of your data, to make sure that nobody gets your credit card from us or your debit card from us. It's stored in an encrypted data center in the cloud or in Atlanta. So we're knocking ourselves out, working as hard as we can to protect your data and to keep our SCADA system, which Jason talked about in this film, where we can actually control, you know, and segment. When you have an outage and 1,000 people go out, and he can flip a switch in the office and 850 get served from another source. All that is under the security, and this is just a little network diagram that illustrates these 8 to 9 areas of security. So please be assured that we're not bulletproof, but we're very much ahead of the curve with cybersecurity. I skipped infrastructure because I didn't have a slide, but one of the biggest threats that we face is the lack of infrastructure, especially in Geneva County. The long-term viability of this co-op depends on people living in our territory. And recent census data shows that population in Geneva County is actually declining. And I want you to know that your board and your management team is actively engaged in lighting up the lives here, making life better so that when your children grow up, they want to come back. And I'm going to tell you some of the things so that businesses will locate here and create jobs. And one of the projects that Brad is working on, and Brad is meeting with a number of our legislative officials. I'll call out some of the names in a minute. And there's a group working on putting 4-lane roads in. One of the projects they've identified is to go from the Florida line all the way to Highway 84 in Enterprise. Another one is from Dothan out to Hartford, Highway 52, to finish 4-laning all the way. And we have a coalition of strategic partners, and it includes your Senator Chastain, Jeff Sorrells, our representative, former mayor of Hartford, leaders from Dothan like Mark Saliba, leaders from Enterprise, and we've gotten everybody in this area together, and Brad meets with them on a regular basis, and we're working as hard as we can, meeting with the DOT, meeting with the Florida DOT, and we have a strategic initiative to get some 4-lane roads in Geneva County so that businesses will locate, so that we can have a better life. Now, I can't guarantee you we'll be successful. I can't promise you, but I'm going to tell you, we've been working on this for years and years. We've got some great leadership now. We have the best leadership in Geneva County we've ever had. You know, with Donnie and Jeff and our county commissioner, Toby C. He's actively engaged with us. So there's a lot that's going on that's never happened before. And so that's part of what we're doing. And we'll continue to report to you as we have success. The final area, well, let me talk a bit as far as challenges, a little bit about the digital divide. You've been seeing in the magazine that we partner with Troy University and ask our membership to participate in a internet study to see what kind of internet do you actually have. The result was that 70% of our members do not have broadband internet. Now what that means is you have less than 25 megabytes of internet speed. Now, does anybody here concerned about that issue? Okay. If you're not, your kids are. If your kids got homework to do, one of my servicemen came to me and said, Les, my kids got homework and we get less than 1 meg, we get like 200K, and she can't even get the research done to do her homework, okay? If you're farming and you want to use GPS coordinates to spread your seed or to spread your herbicides or whatever, you have to have internet. If you need medical care, you need internet, because now they can have a specialist in Birmingham, you know, do telemedicine with your local doctor, and you don't have to drive to Birmingham. Okay? What are we going to do if we don't get broadband internet? The county will continue to atrophy and die. So the digital divide is of urgent concern to us. That's one of the storms. Put the boulder man, go back, let me put the boulder man. I didn't explain to you my slide. Go back. Okay. I should have started with this. This is what we feel like sometimes with these challenges. You know, not having infrastructure, not having broadband, not having, when the storm comes in, when cybersecurity is threatening us, every day we come in and we feel like we got to push this boulder up a hill. That's the Greek. That's the Greek king of Corinth, Sisyphus, and that's a Greek myth about pushing the boulder up. And the point in the myth is he pushes the boulder up, and then as soon as he lets up, it rolls back. And that's kind of what it feels like, you know. So then now go back forward to the energy. So now the energy ground is moving under our feet, and does anybody know what that picture is a picture of? That's a solar farm, okay? Well, everything in the news is about 30 states are saying by 2035 or 2050 they're not going to have any fossil fuels and all that anymore, and solar's everywhere. That's a 75 megawatt solar farm. And we feel pressure from the government to not use fossil fuels any more than we have to, and to utilize solar and other carbonless technology. So that's sort of an obstacle we're challenging. And I want to explain to you how we approach this. When it becomes economically feasible to use these technologies, we will use them, okay? We have resisted being an early adopter because we don't want our power costs to go up 10 or 15 or 20%. Several dozen states that have implemented these early have seen, on average, the electric rates have gone up 17% in the last 10 years. The power cost in your rate at Wiregrass Electric has not gone up since 2010. We're still operating on the same revenue that we operated on in 2010, okay? So we're working hard to keep the rates down. Now, that said, the government is requiring us to look at these things, and we're going to adopt them. So this year, Power South has contracted to have a 75 megawatt solar farm built. The cost of it is not going to hurt us. The prices have come to the point where it's not going to hurt us. So we're beginning to adopt that. Next slide. Now I'm going to hit a few points on lighting up your life. Well, Brad's done a good job of talking about a couple of safety tips. The most important thing we talk about every day is safety, and I tried to think about how to make an example, how I could explain that to you. We have not had a serious contact injury since 2003. It's the last time one of our linemen made contact, and obviously we want zero contacts. Since 2010, we've had about a half a dozen injuries on the job. One of our linemen fell backwards and broke his wrist this year. So we spend a lot of resources to train our linemen on safe practices. And one of the things that we do with the support of our board is give the linemen the right equipment. They have the rubber gloves to protect them against shock. You see our nice bucket trucks. We do not spare any expense in providing them the tools to be safe. And one of the things that we got this year, we learned from Hurricane Michael that something called a skid steer from Caterpillar comes in really handy in spaces that you can't get the big trucks into. So we bought our first skid steer this year, and the guys love it. They're able to go into a tight space, and places they would have to climb, they can use the skid steer. And places they would have to dig with a pole digger, they can use the skid steer because it fits. So safety is one way we light up our lives, and and your safety is part of that. Next slide, Danny. No, go back. The three pictures I put up here. In 1939, before Wiregrass Electric, if you wanted light, that's how you got it. So from 1939 until today, when we say you are the light of the world, got electric light bulb. Does anybody know what this picture represents? Okay. The message I want to reinforce is fiber optics is the light, is the electricity of the 30s and 40s. It's equally important. Next slide. All right. Every month at our board meeting, we talk about our rates and are we being fair, competitive, and are our rates affordable for our members? I hope you're glad to hear that. I hope you're glad to know that the board of directors that you elected keeps an eye on this. This is for September. What's represented in this slide are the 20 members of Power South Energy. 4 are municipalities. Municipalities have different characteristics than we do. There's 16 co-ops. At 1,500 kilowatt hours, if you happen to use that amount, your bill at Wiregrass Electric this month would be $176.96. You notice that Alabama Power and Gulf Power are compared with. Does it surprise you that your little old cooperative is almost $20 a month less than Alabama Power? Okay, I don't think most people would realize that. What about 2,000 kilowatt hours? Look at the difference here, here, and here. And we're getting near the top as far as the lowest cost provider within the Power South system. In 3,000 kilowatt hours, Wiregrass Cooperative is the 3rd lowest co-op in the Power South system. Okay? We design our rates. A lot of it is for the members that struggle the most. The ones that can't necessarily afford a new house. Maybe they're in a manufactured home. They may not be able to afford redoing their windows. About 20 to 25% of our members struggle to pay their bills. We really think about them a lot, and how can we do things to help them? That's why the higher the energy goes, the better the rate is because it's often the people that struggle the most that need the help. That's intentional, and I hope you all would appreciate that. Next slide, Danny. Oh, wow. Anybody get their power bill and notice a capital credit? Yay. $1.1 million was just returned to the members. Do you understand why you get patronage capital returned? You know, it's interesting when surveys are done, most people don't realize that they own the co-op. They think of themselves as a customer. Well, you're not a customer. You are an owner of the co-op. All the employees here, we work for you. Okay? So, we use your capital for 22 years. We charge a little margin over our cost, and it takes currently $130 million of investment in poles, in transformers, in substations, in wire, and in all kind of voltage regulators and capacitors. When you add up what it costs to provide you power, it takes $130 million of capital investment. So where does that money come from? We charge a small margin over our cost every year, and we assign it into a patronage account with your name on it. And as soon as we can afford to, we give it back. So the 1997 members got $1.1 million returned this year. Okay? So, yay. So, thank you. The rest of the money we borrow mostly from the federal government. We have about a $50 million debt portfolio. Again, Lisa, our CFO right here on the front, manages that. Pay about 3.2% interest. We get really low interest. And so that's how we float this boat every day. Okay. Next slide, Danny. Another thing that we started in 2010 is we said, well, the capital credits are really good for the member that's been on for 22 years because they get something every year. But what about the new members? What about the folks that are, haven't been on but a year or two or three? And so we do our budget every year, and we plan for what we think the power cost is going to be. We have to estimate what's the cost of natural gas going to be, what's the cost of the coal that we're going to burn going to be. And throughout the year, if our power cost is less than budgeted, we start giving the money back. So this slide shows you that since 2010, each year, how much we've given you as a credit on your bill. And that adds up to $10.8 million since 2010. Now here's the good news. You see, so far this year through September, we've given back just about $250,000. And we didn't know until a few weeks ago how much FEMA money we were going to get back. So we got a $500,000 surprise a few weeks ago, and now we're going to try to give back $500,000 in the fourth quarter. So you're going to see significant credits on your power bill in October, November, and December. Okay. Again, where else do you do business that when they have a good year, they give you some money back? This is great. That's a cooperative. Okay. Danny, give me another one. Now, I'm just going to hit just a minute on strategic partnerships, and thank you for your patience. We only get to talk once a year, and this is all important stuff, but bringing broadband to the Wiregrass is a very complex discussion. And we put something in the magazine every month. And no matter what we say, people seem to misunderstand. So I'm going to try one more time. When I got here in 2005, we started trying to find somebody that would bring internet to our members. I clearly remember inviting Graceba to our offices and begging them to please come build fiber into Geneva County. They said, it's not economically feasible, no way we're going to do it. Later on, we tried to partner with CenturyLink, our telephone provider. At the time, we were paying them a lot of money. We never progressed there. So, a couple of years ago, we got acquainted with Troy Cable. They had partnered with South Alabama Electric Co-op in Troy. And we said, is there any way we can get you to risk your private capital and to come in and serve our members? Okay? And they said, if you help us, we will come. Okay? So, we talked to our board. They said, see what you can work out. And we started by severing our relationship with other companies. And our communication needs here are several $1,000s a month. And so we said, we'll give you our business. And we need fiber at our 15 substations, and we need fiber at all our offices. Jump ahead a couple of slides, Danny, because I'm really talking about. Give me a couple more slides ahead. One more. So, because I'm talking about this, we might as well see it. So, the blue line on top, the dark blue line, is where Troy Cable had existing fiber lines. As you can see, it kind of is on the north and the west side of our territory. Now, why are they there? Because Representative Donnie Chastain passed legislation called the Wired Act that provided funding for the schools to have internet. Troy Cable won that business, and that line all the way down to Florales to bring internet to the schools. It was through state legislation, state funding. So we said, okay, that worked pretty good. Why don't we tie into that and bring it this way? And Donnie sponsored some legislation that put $7.4 million of state money up on an 80-20 match, which meant Troy Cable would have to put up 80% of the money, but they could get a 20% grant. And we worked hard with them. We gave them all the spots where people live that need internet, and we had this fabulous grant proposal in. And then we did a belly flop because the federal communications rules said that if you've got DSL in one house in your census block, you're not eligible for federal money or state money. So our grant was declined. So we got Donnie and Jeff Sorrells and Steve Klaus and Dexter Grimsley and Paul Lee and Rhett Marcus. We all got together and we said, you know, we're pushing this rock up the hill and now it's rolled back on us. What are we going to do? We're going to push it back up. And they redid the bill and redefined the rules. And go back a slide, Danny. One slide back. And we got the first state grant a few months ago. And I say we. Troy Cable gets the money. And Troy Cable is putting the 80% with it. But our name was on the grant application supporting it. So what do? We got 3,000 miles of poles and wire that go in front of your house. And all they got to do is come down the pole and hang fiber on it. And so what we do is we say, Troy Cable, if you'll serve my member, I'll get that pole. It's called make ready. We'll do whatever we have to do to get that pole ready, you know. And so sometimes we have to move poles, you know, back to the road. Sometimes the poles and wire are going down your property. We have to bring them out to the road. Sometimes the pole needs to be taller. But our commitment is, let's make this happen, okay? Now, since the first year, in October, a new round happened, round 2, and now the state's got $20 million sitting out there. And Brad and Jason and Troy Cable met a few days ago, and they brought our maps. They got all your addresses on there, people that don't have service. And we're trying to do a grant application to get several hundred or 1,000 or however many we can get served, okay? And if we get that $1.5 million, Troy Cable will have to put $2.5 million of their money up. This is a 65-35 match. And it's kind of like eating an elephant, okay? If we were to do this by ourselves without a strategic partnership, it's $25,000 a mile to run fiber. Now, I've got 3,000 miles of line. That's 75 million bucks, okay? So it's not going to happen without people partnering together and without getting state grants and federal grants. So that's what we're doing. We're getting people together. Go to the next slide, Danny. All right, go back 2. Sorry, go back 2. All right, so here are the partners. Troy Cable, they're putting private capital in. They're installing a gigabit fiber network. The state legislators, Donnie Chastain, Jeff, Paul Lee, Rhett Marcus, Steve Klaus, Dexter Grimsley. They're writing legislation to help us have access to grants. They also rewrote the legislation associated with pole attachments, because when they hang fiber on our poles, we need protection from plaintiff attorneys who would like to argue that we're doing something that's not right. Third, federal legislators. Brad and Sean Strickler from area and a number of other cooperative leaders went to Washington. And I want you to hear this, y'all. This is awesome, okay? You need internet. The federal guidelines are broken. And who's going to Washington speaking up for you? We are. Brad was there. And when we go and we say we represent 17,500 Wiregrass members, we get an appointment in Martha Roby's office, and she's got all the time we need because we're representing you, okay? That's how it works. And we're proud of that. And I'm really proud of Brad. He logs a lot of miles, and you know, he works really hard with our relationships with all these legislators. We host a meeting once a quarter in our community room, and legislators are there. Linda Young from Wallace Community College is there. Business leaders are there. And all we're doing is working on issues that affect you that will bring light to your life. Finally, let's go forward again, Danny. Okay, so I'm telling you the ground is moving under our feet. I'm sad to tell you that October of next year, Power South Energy, that we are part owners of, is closing their Loman coal plant. It was built in the 70s, and in the 70s it was illegal. Federal law said we can't make electricity with natural gas, so we built a coal plant. So in 2018 and 19, the federal government says you can't keep making electricity with coal because it's putting too much carbon dioxide in the air. And we're going to make it so expensive because you're going to have to treat the water. You have to put a water treatment plant in. It's going to be so expensive for you to comply, you're just going to have to shut it down. So 175 long-time 20 and 30-year employees of Power South are going to lose their job. Now, to mitigate against that, we're building a combined cycle natural gas plant at the same site, and it will employ 35 of those employees. But the world is changing rapidly, and we're having to find ways to reduce the amount of carbon dioxide that's emitted with our power. So I showed you the picture of the solar farm. That's coming. But here's the other thing. This is Plant Vogel. It's a nuclear plant near Savannah, Georgia. Each one of these stacks represents 1,100 megawatts. And if you don't know this, nuclear energy is carbonless. There is no carbon dioxide emission. That plant's supposed to come online in 2021 at the end of the year. And we'll be getting about 10% of your energy from nuclear at that time. So we'll have that. We've got the solar. We've got 200 megawatts of hydropower. So we're trying to comply with all this regulatory burden and also to not emit carbon dioxide. But there are many challenges like that face us, but there's no challenge that we can't push through with our great team. It's our privilege to serve you. Thank you for being patient and listening to these remarks. God bless you.
All right, thank you, Les, and thank you for what you do each and every day, too. Do a good job for us.